Hello, welcome to Pension 10 with me, David Brooks, and my colleague Kelly Parsons. We had a short break last week, half terms, Easter holidays. It was too much to get things in, so we had a little break off. But here we are back and picking up what's been going on in the world of pensions in the meantime. I'll be honest, it's a relatively quiet time, but we managed to fill the 10 minutes anyway. So I've been looking at mandation powers in the Pension Schemes Bill and things overseas. But the first story we have today is Kelly looking at targeted support, which is a brand new initiative which is coming through into the market. Okay, Kelly, first up, we're going to look at targeted support, which came into force a week or so ago. But we've already seen some movements in the market. Can you bring us up to date?
Yeah, targeted support. I mean, firstly, what does that actually mean for people? And it's trying to bridge the gap. So we've got a bit of a gap in between what actual advice looks like. So that's very much bespoke to the individual for their needs, for their lifestyle, for all the other money and funds they've got access to the signposting that a lot of people do get at retirement, and it's very basic, very generic. It's kind of bridging the gap between that. It's very much kind of, it's not advice, but it's very much giving information and situational guidance around, with, they keep on using the term guardrails, a bit of protection around there to make sure and give people that kind of confidence to make those next steps and those choices about where they go in retirement, but without giving them full advice. And the full advice piece obviously is costly. So it kind of like, it says to an individual, do I really need that? Is it worthwhile? Is it beneficial? And it will either lead them to the path of making that decision themselves, or going, actually, I can do this myself. It's not so bad. I can handle it. It's absolutely fine. It's that, very much that. And it will be a lot of AI generated information, which will kind of give them a bit of help there. But there's also the next step, and there'll be people available to be able to take them through those steps and the help that's needed. It's let's hope. I mean, it's still very much in the early days, and it's been talked about for quite a while, and it's recently come, in the press. I think it was on Radio 4 or something mentioned. Because targeted advice has been known in different areas, but what does it actually mean in the financial services and pensions is quite okay. Let's watch this space and see.
Okay, and some providers have announced they're doing it. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Royal London have kind of led the pack really with doing this. So they've launched, I think it was last week. I think Quilters as well have been on it. We know that there's a lot of other providers on that road to launching and doing. Some are a bit of maybe wait and see. Let's see what's happening and what's going on. But yeah, Royal London have been working with the FCA for quite a while, since the brainchild was kind of like thought of and launched and what have you. And I know that they're one of the first that are getting it up and running and going with their members and targeting that support that's I think well needed, well overdue really, because it is quite a bit of a time when people go, oh, just don't know what to do. A bit of nervousness around, because it is a big chunk of money quite often for most people. After their house, it will be their biggest asset from any savers. It's hopefully should be a good way to go. And Royal London, as I say, leading the pack.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it is part of a system, I suppose. We've talked, the government also talking about that simplified advice, and then we've got the guide to retirement. This is all that thing of just worrying about people that, like you say, have got some money, any sum of money in their pension, but the bigger it gets, the more pressure, isn't it, to use it effectively, I suppose. And if you can segment your membership up and say, for these guys who've got £50,000 or less, we should be telling them this, but people with $500,000 to $1 million, then we should be telling them this, and we're trying to get them to think about planning ahead. And we were chatting offline before we started, what people tend to do these days, taking tax-free cash at different times and all these sorts of things. It's quite interesting. You get these sorts of behavioural influences on what people do with their pension. But if you can just get people thinking about it and planning ahead, even if it is 5-10 years before they can get it, and then when they get there, it's more realistic. Because a lot of it is, a lot of when we think about our retirements and things. I'm 50, so I'm thinking about what I might do in. I've got a 4-year-old, so 20 years' time, ruin my retirement plans. But you do sort of something. Even if you're not reacting on it, I'm still trying to save as much as I can. But you do start thinking about what would my retirement look like? What sort of fund am I going to have? What would I want to do? Would I want to draw down some tax-free cash early to use? Do I want to just leave that as much as possible and use other savings on the way, and all those sorts of things? Having that kind of just framing it and thinking about it it's new. It's new. It's something that probably hasn't happened other than voluntarily by providers. Having a framework for it, I think
Yeah.
it's really useful.
Yeah, agree. Very exciting. So, David, I believe there's been quite a little bit of press in the last few days about mandation and around all that. Can you just give us a bit of an insight what's been going on?
Yeah, regular listeners and anyone who reads pensions press over the last, I don't know, year or so will be well versed in this. So this is a very controversial power for the government to mandate how pension schemes invest their default fund assets. And there's been lots of toing and froing. And the government, well, I suppose Torsten Bell, the pension minister, promised something a month or so ago that there would be a change to the rules, and that hadn't happened for a while. There'd been a bit of toing and froing with the Lords kicking it out, and the government putting it back in. And the easement that's come through in the last few days or week or so has been that the government's amending the bill so it reads a bit more like the Mansion House Accord. So the Accord, which we know is the some of the industry signed up to, a good proportion of the industry signed up to, which allows for 10%, will pledges that 10% of the default fund would be in productive finance, of which 50% of that 10%, so 5% of assets would be in UK focused assets. And so the mandation power in the bill now mirrors that. So the government is effectively ring fencing that use of that power, which has been recognised by the industry. Industry comment just before the weekend and over the weekend, Pensions UK, SPP, has been broadly been welcomed. I suspect there's been a lot of behind the scenes discussions going on, in the sense that, so this is probably good news. Off the line again, Kelly asked me, is this good news? And I sat back in my chair and did a big huff. I can't quite work out, and I still can't work out if I think it's good or bad news. I would rather there wasn't a mandation power. I'd rather we had this Mansion House Accord and the government created the opportunities and it became a no-brainer that these things were perfect, or the opportunities weren't there and it's fine for schemes not to invest because that's not the right thing for their members. So the fact we still have it, I don't like. But, the government were hell-bent on having it. So if we have to have it, then so be it. I think the arguments will continue. There's also further discussions ongoing, though. So the Pensions UK have also said they want to bring forward the reserve power. I think the reserve power runs out in 2035. So this isn't used in 2035, then it falls away. They're wanting to bring that forward, so it happens a bit sooner. So we'll see if there's any movement on that, or if the pensions minister comments on that. So that's kind of where we are. So we'll see. The pensions bill is being discussed again on Wednesday, and so we'll see how that goes through. It's nearly at its final stages, so we're nearly there. So I suspect a lot of the things that the Lords are putting in, that the government are kicking out, will just happen again. But then there'll be a slight debate over this. It'll be interesting to see if the Lords try and kick it out completely, or whether they just surrender and let this just go as is. We'll have a watching eye on that. However, and this, I've been signposted this, so I'm just going to go off a slight segue now. I don't know how to do a segue in this way, but a friend, David Harris, the other day he commented on Pension 10 saying, look at what the Department of Labour are doing in the US around investments. And so I did. And it's actually quite interesting. It's something I hadn't really been aware of. And there's definitely an interesting area here. And it kind of links back to this, but it's definitely governments taking a keen eye on how their pension assets are invested. So in the UK, the emphasis is on the UK private markets. The US, they're actually pivoting away from having those sort of ESG systemic risk overlays that we've been bringing in the UK over the last few years. Things from the General Code and other areas where trustees have had, the duty to consider non-financially material factors and financial material factors, of which ESG kind of fits in both. They're actually kicking this out in America. So they've set up a framework where there are 6 factors, I won't list them all, but performance, fees, valuations, benchmarking, complexity. I probably have listed them all because they're just written there. But but there's no reference. There's new guidance that's just come out that's being discussed. There's actually no reference in the whole document to ESG risks. No reference to anything like that at all. So that's quite a big change. Now, it's not necessarily the UK will follow this, but it does frame how asset managers think about setting up their products for which UK trustees might be investing in. How they structure them, how they market them to investors. So we're going to see, I think, a slightly reduced emphasis on ESG factors in investments, and this is quite interesting and could play into our world a little bit. It is interesting, again, the government in the US is still keen on US focused investments. They've also weakened some of the rules around crypto as well, which is interesting. Crypto going to to pension assets, which I don't like. You could ask that directly. I don't like that. That doesn't feel right to me. But it's interesting, and it's something I think UK trustees, investors, while it may not happen directly, we've got a left-leaning government who may not want to, they're quite keen on the green direction of travel, and so it's unlikely they'll mirror this completely. But it does affect the sort of the ecosystem that that investors and trustees are working in. So definitely something to keep an eye on.
Thanks very much for today. That was Pensions in 10. If you like what you've heard, don't forget to like and subscribe.